This tutorial is intended for new users of RailClone and provides a thorough introduction to some of the most commonly used features. By completing these exercises, new users will be able to use the built-in library, understand the style editor, and easily create new styles. Before creating our own new RailClone object, let's look at how to use the extensive library that comes with the plugin. RailClone comes with over 280 predefined styles, allowing you to easily add common objects to your scenes. Using these styles is simple, often requiring only the creation of a single spline to determine the path. Let's create one now. Create a new spline in the top or perspective viewport. This will become the base object that defines the path used to create the geometry. Go to the Create panel, Geometry Itoosoft, and click on RailClone. Drag out a new object in the perspective viewport. The size of the icon has no effect on the final geometry. With the object selected, go to the Modify panel and open the Style Rollout. Click on the Open RailClone Library Browser button. This will currently say none, but will display the name of the style once it's been loaded. The library browser allows you to save, share and load predefined styles. The window is split into two panes. On the left is a directory navigator that allows you to browse the current style libraries. Built-in libraries are represented by a blue folder and can't be changed. The editable user libraries are green. The larger pane on the right is the items grid that previews the styles in the library currently selected from the directory navigator. To load a style from the library into the scene, simply double-click on its preview, click Import Selected, or right-click and select Use Item. Once a style is loaded, nothing will display until you select a new path from the scene. To do this, go to the Base Objects Rollout, and here you'll find a list of the inputs required for the loaded style to work. Select the spline item from the list, click on the Spline Object Picker, and select the spline from the scene that we created earlier. A new brick wall will now be created in the viewport. The wall is linked to the base object. If you edit the source spline, the RailClone object automatically updates. In the next section, we'll take a brief tour of the style editor and look at how this object's been constructed. The style editor is used to construct a relationship between base objects, segments, operators and generators that define how a RailClone object is constructed. To examine the style rule set used in the wall we just created, go to the Style Rollout and click on the Open Style Editor button. The style editor features an easy to understand node-based view with an interface split into three panes. On the right is the items list. This shows all the generators, objects, parameters and operators that can be combined to construct a style. In the center is the construction view. Nodes are created by dragging them from the items list to this area. To wire nodes together, simply click and drag between their respective input and output slots. On the left-hand side is the properties editor. Clicking a node in the construction view shows its editable parameters in this window. Now we know the theory, we'll create a new brick wall style from scratch. Open up wall.max. This file contains the three objects we need to create the wall. Create a new straight spline in a perspective or top view. This is going to become the base object that defines the path for our new style. Go to the Create panel, Geometry Itoosoft, and click RailClone. Drag out a new RailClone object in the perspective viewport. Now go to the Style Rollout and click on the Open Style Editor button. One-dimensional arrays need at least a generator, a spline and a segment to function. We'll add those next. Create a new L1S generator by dragging it from the items list to the construction view. Create a new spline object by dragging it from the items list to the construction view. Select the spline node and from the properties editor rename the spline wall path. Wire the spline node's output slot to the generator's spline by clicking and dragging between them with the mouse. Assign the spline by going to the base object rollout, select wall path from the list, click the Assign Spline button and pick the spline we created earlier. Now the path's been assigned, we need to pick the geometry to clone along it. Create a new segment object by dragging it from the items list to the construction view. Select the segment node, go to the properties editor and click on the object picker button. Select the mesh called wall middle from the scene. Wire the segment's output to the generator's default input. The wall will be generated, cloning and adapting the mesh along the path. By default, the RailClone object doesn't have a material assigned. Open the material editor and assign the wall material to it from the scene materials. To create a more complex style, we'll add brick piers at the start and end points of the path. To do this, in the style editor, create a new segment and pick the wall post object from the scene. Wire the input slots of this segment to both the start and end inputs on the generator. The wall will now have a post at either end, but if you zoom in on the joint between the post and the wall, you'll notice that there's a small gap. This is because, by default, the bounding box RailClone uses to calculate the position of adjacent segments is based on the widest point of the geometry, and this includes the top piece of the post. To fix this issue, we need to add a negative padding value to both sides of the post element. So let's go back to the style editor, access the post segments properties, and from the general tab you'll see a padding for each side of the object. Set the left and the right padding values to -5 to close the gap. Now you can experiment with the spline, moving or adding vertices. Being a parametric object, RailClone will build the wall automatically, even bending segments to follow curved paths. When you're ready, unhide all the objects from the scene and you'll find another spline, RailClone, and a wall evenly mesh object, which will be used in the next part. Let's reassign this new spline. Go to Base Objects, select the wall path from the list, and assign the RailClone spline as a path using the Pick Spline button. For this wall, we'll add posts to the corners of the spline. In the style editor, wire the wall post segments output to the generator's corner input. To stop the posts from rotating to follow the direction of the path, go to the generator's properties, open the second tab marked Rules and turn off Align to Path in the corner section. By default, RailClone applies this rule to all the splines vertices of the corner and Bezier corner type, but this can be easily changed by selecting others from the vertex type drop-down menu. If you get close, you can see a problem. The plugin tries to adapt the mesh in the corners, bending the segments and creating an undesirable result. To fix this issue, go to the wall post properties, Deform, and untick Bend. Finally, we'll add some smaller posts evenly spaced along the wall. Create a new segment object and pick Wall Evenly from the scene. Wire this node to the evenly input of the generator. To adjust the spacing, select the generator, go to the Properties panel, find the Rules tab and the Evenly section, and set the distance to 250. And this completes the tutorial. The wall is done. Feel free to experiment by creating other splines, manipulating the existing, or adjusting any of the parameters we've discussed in this tutorial. Once you've completed this, you should be able to create new RailClone objects, load styles from the library, and use the styles editor to create new parametric objects. For any more information about every aspect of RailClone's features, please see our reference section or visit the tutorials page for more advanced videos.